behavior of whoever is using it. And we have come to know that they are chemicals. So there are drugs that are considered to be illicit. There are the ones that are considered to be licit. When you look at it, you have so many drugs on the table. You can see alcohol here. You can see some other drugs. You can see cough syrup. You can see some drugs in tablet form. So some of these drugs, some of them are licit. Licit in the sense that they have been confirmed to be safe for our use, for the use in the treatment of disease, which only a qualified medical personnel or practitioner can prescribe for us to use. We have some of them on the table. Then we have other ones that has now been considered to be illicit. You still have some of them on the table as well. These, on the other hand, the illicit one now are the drugs that measures has been taken to prohibit their cultivation, their manufacture, their sales, their consumption. Which means that in our society, some drugs has been classified that we should not have them, we should not use them, we should not sell them, we should not manufacture them, and we should not cultivate them, and we should not use them at all. The law says no to all these kind of drugs, and you have some of them as well on the table. And when you now look at it, from all what I've been saying, it brings us down to drug abuse. So when we're now talking about drug abuse, what do we mean by drug abuse? We say some drugs are illicit. We say some are also licit. You can use some you cannot use them, some you cannot cultivate them, some you cannot buy them, some you cannot even have anything to do with them. So what is drug abuse? So drug abuse can generally be defined as the unguided use of both the legal and the illegal drugs to the detriment of the users, which means that both drugs can be abused. The one that is safe for our consumption can be abused. The one that is not even good for our consumption, a lot of people are also abusing them. So drug abuse generally can be defined as the unguided use of both the legal and the illegal drugs to the detriment of the user and the society at large. In other words, drug can said to be abused when it is not medically necessary. You can see some tablets here, you can see cough mixture here, which means that some of these drugs, people are using them without any medical justification. It is legally prohibited. It is used without legal or lawful authority. It is used excessively. So which means that some people are already abusing drugs without having any medical justification for them. Some people are even using the ones that are medically necessary. They are using them excessively. Even the ones that are prohibited, a lot of people are also using them. A lot of people are also using them. What are the stages of drug abuse? These drugs that you can see here, for somebody to start abusing them, there is always a pattern. It starts from the stage of experimentation. You want to experiment with it. Somebody sees a drug. You start taking them. How does it taste? How does it feel? That is the first stage, experimenting with it. If I take it, the doctor says I should take 10 milligrams of cough syrup. I've taken 10 milligrams. Let me take 20 milligrams. Let me see how it will feel on my body. From the stage of experimentation, the person becomes an occasional user. I'm just using the cough mixture as an example. From experimenting with cough mixture now, it comes down to occasional using. He will have an excuse, he uses it when he's among the friends who are also into that kind of a thing. When he's not with them, he doesn't use it. So he starts first by experimenting, he goes to occasional use, it becomes now the third stage is now the stage of regular using. Is now using regularly. Is now a regular user. Regularly, he can use it. He doesn't have bother again. From there, it becomes dependent. That is the stage of addiction. And that is why we have found ourselves in a lot of places in our society nowadays. It becomes an addict. It becomes so dependent on the drug. That is why you have so many vices in our society. You see a lot of people who are already addicted to it. They cannot do without it. You now see them going the extra mile because they need to get the finances to be able to continue with their addiction. You now see them, what are the root causes of all the vices in our society? Drug abuse. You now see them trying to get money because of their, you see them going into kidnapping. You see them going into armed robbery as a result of their addiction. So these drugs that we have on the table, what are their classification? When somebody abuses, when somebody wants to abuse this drug, what are their classification? The first one are the drugs that are known as narcotics. Narcotics generally are the pain killers. They have the potent to kill pain. After my lecture, Mr. Stewart will still come up to show us some of the drug. Well, even though the law says we should not show us, but because we're in the work environment, we're all adults, and we're not showing us for us to go and experiment. We're showing us for us to have a better understanding and for us to know some of these drugs. There were some people, let me just digress a little. There were some people that were arrested in a party some time ago, and they were seated together on the table. And then you see somebody was with a bottle like this, and he offered to other people on the table. And the guy said he thought he was offered Zobo. I hope you understand that. So it's for the purpose of situations like that. So it's for the purpose of situations like that we need to show us. I hope there's nobody that is below 18. Okay, thank you very much. So we're free. So we can show us some samples of the drug for us to have a better understanding so that we don't fall victim like that young guy that said he thought he was offered Zobo. Thank you. So narcotics are drugs that generally they have the potent to kill pain, and they have pain-killing effects. And in the process of doing so, they produce other minor effects. And then you see a lot of people who are already addicted to drugs that falls under these categories. These drugs could easily be abused as their use results in a false sense of being. You see people tell after the use of drugs that falls under narcotics, they tell you that they have a false sense of being. They can do so many things that they cannot do ordinarily. You have drugs like morphine, you have so many of them. The most common in this category are drugs that are known as tramadol or TM for short. You also have heroin. So TM is common in our society and a lot of people are already addicted to them. TM generally, they kill pains and a lot of people are addicted to them. We also have the stimulants. The stimulants are drugs that has the psychoactive properties in them and they stimulate the central nervous system. There are strong stimulants like cocaine, the white powder, you have cocaine here as well. You have some designer drugs, designer in the sense that they have gone through a lot of process. And then when you see them, you will not know that they are drugs of abuse, that they are illicit drugs that people are also addicted to. You have so many of them. You have a China white, you have drugs that falls under amphetamine. You have the mild stimulants, even the tea, the coffee, the cola nut, and the tobacco that we take falls under stimulants. Then you also have the depressants. The depressant, they are the opposite of the stimulants. The depressants and weaken and make somebody to be inactive. They are strong depressants. You have so many in these categories. The one that we are very familiar with, you have the Valium, you have the Lexotan, you have the Libron, you have so many of the cough syrup because of the codeine content in them. We found out that a lot of people are already addicted to majority of the drugs that are in this category. Some people are already addicted to Valium 5, to Lexotan, to Libron. You see so many people who are also taking cough syrup with codeine without any medical justification. I've come across, there was a time I worked in a state, and the state commander called me that, madam, they are bringing some people to your facility, that they are students that were apprehended in the course of stop and search. And they were going home from another state. They were going to the north. And they bought about 10 bottles of cough mixture to be taken as they were going. You know, they delayed the other passengers. They delayed, the driver too was apprehended. At the end, we had to let them go. And then we kept those students in our facility for a period of time because the quantity they were found with was too much. They were abusing cough syrup because of the codeine content in them. They could be our children, and their parents never knew. They had already sold their phones because by the time their relative will come, and I was giving them their properties that they came with, one of them they said, no, madam, this is not the word's phone. I said, is this phone that he came with? So I called the guy and said, where's your phone? He couldn't point to the phone because he left home with a very good sophisticated phone. And in school, he traded the phone so that he could get money to buy drugs. So depressants, we've talked about narcotics, we've talked about stimulants, depressants, and then we're going now to cannabis sativa. That is the name, cannabis sativa. We have other names for it. So we have cannabis sativa, is also known as marijuana, is also known as wee-wee, is known as igbo, is known as grass. And then it produces the effect of both the stimulants and the depressants for the user, depending on the quantity that is being used. You found out that in the cannabis sativa, there is an active ingredient that is known as tetrahydrocannabinol, THC for short. The THC in cannabis sativa makes it to stay long in the body of the user for a period of between 10, 20, 15 to 30 days. So for somebody to be abusing cannabis sativa for a long period of time, you can imagine the effect that it's going to have on the body. So cannabis sativa is one of the drugs that is abused widely, and Nigeria is not an exception. It's one of the drugs that has the highest number of users everywhere that you go, anywhere that you go. And we have, from our research, from our survey, and from what we are seeing, there are some areas in Nigeria that is actively cultivating cannabis sativa. You also have the alcohol. You might be surprised that alcohol is also classified as a drug because it depresses the central nervous system. And it also produces intoxicating effects. Alcohol is socially acceptable because it's not medicinal and is one of the highest drugs that is abused worldwide. That means that it comes after, it's the first, then cannabis sativa follows. And you have alcohol in various forms. You have the wine. You can see a bottle of wine, even though it's socially acceptable. But what does the law say? It says we should drink responsibly. And alcohol is not for somebody who is under the age of 18. So we have various forms of alcohol. You have the wine, you have the palm wine, you have the beer, you have burukutu. If you have ever been to the north, you have ogogoro, you have pinto, you have them in various forms. And we have even come to realize now that even our local palm wine, a lot of people are now lacing them with other illicit drugs. We're talking from experience, from what we have seen. We have seen people who lace their palm wine with drugs like tramadol, we have come across them, and we have apprehended them in the course of our operations. So it's not as if I'm just talking out of context. We have seen it. We now have the tobacco as well. I'm sure a packet of cigarettes is somewhere here. It contains 4,000 chemicals, which includes cancer-causing toxins, as well as high levels of nicotine. Tobacco is also one of the drugs that is abused, even though it's not medicinal. We see a lot of people who are taking snuff, who are taking cigarettes, and we know that it can result into cancer. People who are taking snuff, people who are taking cigarettes, they can explain better the hardship they are passing through. So tobacco is also among the drugs, even though it's socially acceptable. But the Surgeon General is also warning that tobacco will die young in Jesus' name. We also have the inhalants. I'm sure we have inhalants on the table as well. In the course of the exhibition, it will show us inhalants. There are so many stuff that people are inhaling in our society nowadays. A lot of people are now addicted to petrol. A lot of people are addicted to a lot of people are also abused to drugs that falls under this category. And once they are addicted to this kind of drug, you see them hallucinating a lot. They'll tell you they start feeling things or perceiving things that are not real. That's why you see a lot of people are misbehaving in our society nowadays, because they are addicted to drugs that falls under this category. For instance, when you see somebody who is taking drugs that makes them to hallucinate, for instance, somebody is coming on the highway and he sees a trailer coming from this opposite direction from Elisha side, and then another one coming from Owo. And then he starts to hallucinate that, he can just drive and fly over these two trailers, or he can go in between, or he can even go under. And then you see somebody hallucinating. He will tell you that he can fly, that let me just climb on top of these buildings in the factory. And then he believes that he can just jump down. You know that that person is abusing drugs that falls under this category. And you have the anabolic steroids. These are synthetic drugs. They produce muscle building effect. A lot of our sportsmen, a lot of people who are involved in multi-tasks, you see them taking anabolic steroids just because they want to have stamina. And by the time you see them, even females, they take them, you see them building muscles. You see them accomplish, they do tasks that ordinarily they cannot do. I remember the story of Ben Johnson. I remember the story of so many of them that had been banned in the competitive world as a result of the abuse of drugs that falls under this category. You know, when we were young, during the Olympics, and Ben Johnson had taken some kind of steroids. And after the completing the task, it continues to run. People were cheering and people got tired of cheering him. And then the Olympic official had to go and apprehend him. And from there, they just took him to go and test him. And they found out that he had steroids. And that was how his name went down the drain. A future that was very bright was cut short.